I'm Sebastian St. James. Should you buy gold? That is a question we'll be asking today. Plus, I've created brand new tools specifically to test out some of the claims made about gold. If gold wants to be a viable alternative to stocks, then there's a number of tests it must pass. Test number 1. Does it outperform stocks over the long term? That's pretty basic. If gold outperforms stocks, then I'm buying gold. If it doesn't, then why am I buying it? Maybe question 2 will answer that. Does it have a low correlation to stocks? One reason why you might want gold is because when stocks go down, maybe gold goes up. Maybe it's like an inverse relationship. If that's true, then that could smooth out your volatility. How useful would that be? Test number 3. Is it inherently more stable than stocks? This asks, is the price of gold less varied? Is it more predictable? Fortunately for you, I can answer all of those questions. Before we put gold to the test, does gold actually have any negatives? Yes, Warren Buffett. This is Tim, and Tim is a barista. Oh, hi Tim. Tim's cafe is called Tim's Coffee Creations. Well, that's a bit pretentious. He's selling shares for $1 each, right? And the yearly dividend is 10 cents. Well, that's like 10% return. Wow, okay, I'm in on that. This is a chair, right? It looks antique. It could also be the one left over after your nan died. It's really hard to say. So you'll buy the antique chair for $10,000? Okay. Is that a good deal? I've no idea. How much is a chair actually worth? Is it a genuine antique? Is it not? And how much exactly does this chair earn each year? Nothing? If I pay $10,000 now, what will I get in 5 years' time when I try to sell the chair? I don't know. Well, this deal sucks. The chair doesn't actually produce anything for me. On the other hand, with the coffee shop, I'm actually getting 10% guaranteed every year, year after year. It's actually generating something for me. Will the shares go up in value in 5 years' time? I don't know. Are they planning to open a second coffee shop? Actually, it doesn't really matter because I'm getting a return on my money right now. I don't really have to worry about the future. This is a reason why Warren Buffett strongly recommends against buying gold. It's because it doesn't actually generate anything. It just sits there looking pretty. Because gold does not generate anything, you're totally reliant on the whim of the market. Well, that's something to think about, Sebastian, but I'm really interested in gold. I love it. I want to know more about it. Give me the numbers. That I will do. Step number 1, how easy is gold to buy in Australia? If we find out that gold is amazing and yet you can't really get your hands on it, what use is that? This is a stock code PM Gold. It's actually an ETP. What's that? That's an exchange-traded product. So it's like an ETF, except it's a product because it's gold. And this is actually the Perth Mint, as in Western Australia. And this is actually live data from when I recorded this. This is actually PM Gold exchanging hands. So real trading going on. You can see there's lots of activity going on in this ETP. Now, being an ETP, it doesn't come for free. Right, so it has 0.15% management fee, which come to think of it is not too different from one ETF I happen to know. And that's STW, or the ASX 200, that's 0.13% per annum. But what happens if I want some physical gold? Gold I can touch, not just some hypothetical gold. Well, with PM Gold, it can be converted into holdings in the Perth Mint Depository account. I don't know if you can touch it, probably not, but it can actually be converted into real physical gold in their vaults. So I'm using PM Gold as an example. I'm not specifically endorsing them or anything like that, but it does show you how easy it is to get your hands on gold in Australia. Good, I can get my hands on it. Now, what are the tests that we need to overcome to see whether gold is actually worth getting in the first place? Well, test number 1, does it outperform stocks over the long term? This is gold, GOLD versus the S&P 500 over 1 year. All right, what are we dealing with here? So this is physical gold in US dollars, and this is the S&P 500 total return. Total return means including dividends. What about franking credits? Don't be silly, this is US stocks. No franking credits for you. Excuse me, this is in US dollars. Why aren't you comparing in Australian dollars for an Australian audience? Well, to start with, the S&P 500 is actually already in US dollars. I mean, it's the Standard & Poor's 500. It's the American market. So we may as well compare gold directly in the same currency that the S&P 500 is, which is US dollars. Because you'd be buying your gold in Australian dollars and your S&P in Australian dollars, the currencies actually cancel out. So we go straight to the source where I can get a lot more data from. The 1 year return on gold has been 3.17%. The S&P 500 total return, a dismal minus 8.57%. Okay, that's not very good. When are these figures from? I'm recording this on a Monday, so these figures are from the close of business on Friday, 3 days ago. So everything is right up to date. Over the 2 years, wow, that's interesting. The S&P 500 is in red, yes. Blue is gold, right. Oh, and gold's 1. Huh, look at that. So gold over 2 years has returned 14.8%. The S&P 500 has returned a dismal 1.97%. Wow, that's why people like gold. Gold has got a CAGR, a compound annual growth rate of 7.14%. S&P 500, 0.978%. Don't even get me out of bed for that. Over 5 years. Oh, red is in front. Look at that. And so that's the shares. A little bit of crossover there, isn't there? If we go back to 2020, we'll notice the stock market was below. Gold actually did fairly well. Actually, gold's done nothing. To be honest, gold's just gone flat. It's the share market that's dipped, and now the share market's come back up. Over 5 years, gold has returned 51.3%. That sounds good. S&P 500 has returned 55.4%. Okay, so much of a muchness. Gold has a CAGR of 8.63%. Stocks has a CAGR of 9.22%. Over 10 years. Oh, look at that. Wow. So red is out in front. Red, which is the S&P 500, has just basically run away and left gold well behind. Has gold kind of been negative for most of that? Yeah, it looks like it has, actually. Gold has had a return of 23.8%. S&P 500, 206%. Right. Gold has had a CAGR of 2.16%. S&P 500, 11.8%. Over 20 years. Well, look at that. Stocks are out in front. Gold was a little while back, but no more. Gold has returned 483%. The stocks has returned 574%. Well, it's not that much of a difference. Gold has a CAGR of 9.22%. Stocks, 10%. In a previous video, we compared stocks to gold. We did a bit of a simulation of what an emergency fund could look like, but we could only go back 20.6 years. Why 20.6 years? Because that is the data that the Federal Reserve has released on high interest savings account with bonus interest. And so, look, this is the actual data we used. We noticed that gold and shares are actually very, very similar, aren't they? Yeah. And that's why we got the results which we did in that video. Now, towards the end of that video, I specifically said that gold had done very well within this period and that the history of gold, if you go back further, which we weren't able to do because of the cash limitation, is actually not so good for gold. So this video will show you that data. So I go back 30 years. Oh, okay. Stocks in red have done amazingly well. Gold in blue, no. I seem to have gone to sleep. Right. I guess gold gets tired at times and it just needs a little rest for a decade or so. Over 30 years, gold has returned 505%. S&P 500 has returned 1,460%, leaving gold with a CAGR of 6.18% and the S&P 500 9.58%. Over 31.2 years, okay, this is my complete data set. Gold has returned 5.68%, the S&P 500 9.6%. Okay, bit of a difference. That's 31.2 years, but maybe that's not enough data for you. Maybe gold beyond that period has actually outperformed stocks, and I just need more data. Fortunately, I have more data. Well, I don't have data, but I have the graph, and that I will show you now. Here it is, stocks versus gold versus silver. So, what to look for? Well, stocks are the red and blue up the top. There's the Dow Jones and the S&P 500. And down the bottom, you can hardly see it, but we have a yellow line, which is gold, and we have a grey line, which is silver. Oh, well, they're nowhere near stocks. Okay, how much data exactly are we looking at? Well, that's from July 1, 1896, right up to March 17, 2023. Is that enough data for you? So there you go, that's your answer. In the previous video, I telegraphed that gold had not actually done quite so well over its whole history, and now you see for yourself. Okay, so gold is not really the powerhouse of performance, but maybe there's a second reason why people might buy gold. Does it have a low correlation to stocks? Perhaps when the share market crashes, gold goes up, in which case it would smooth out your returns over time, which to a lot of people that'd be very valuable. To answer that question, I had to create a brand new tool for my graphing software, never ever seen before, and I'm very excited to show it to you. This, well, that's not my graphing software, that's a spreadsheet. They're the numbers from 1 to 10, and that's column X. Column Y has the numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, well, they're exactly the same. The question is, will Y protect X if X crashes? Probably not. The numbers so far look identical. There you go, X has crashed, it's suddenly become a 0, and Y's become a 0 as well. Well, that's not particularly helpful. So, Y is of absolutely no use to me at all because X and Y are highly correlated. Oh, that's your new word for the day, correlated. Use it 5 times in a sentence before going to bed. So how do I figure out how correlated 2 lists are? I've got a list of numbers here, I've got a list of numbers there. Presumably in the real world, they just don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How do I calculate how correlated, say, gold and stocks are? Well, we can actually calculate that, and for that, we only need high school maths. But in case your maths class looked like this, did it? Tell me the truth. In which case, we'll just go ahead and use Excel. There it is. Oh, there's a new function, correlated. Gotcha. So we're comparing the 2 lists. In dark blue, well, that's just the X down the left-hand side. In red, well, that's just the column Y. We calculate that. The correlation is 1. Well, yeah, of course, they're perfectly correlated. Got you. So when 2 lists are 100% in sync, the correlation is 1. Good. What does less than 1 mean? Well, let's take a look. So I'm going to mess up the list now. Why? I'm going to shove in the number 11 instead of the number 4. The correlation goes to 0.8298. Okay, so it's close to 1. They're still fairly correlated, but it's not perfect. Let me mess it up again. I'm going to put a 9 there. Oh, the correlation has dropped. Right. 0.45. Okay, I can see how this works. If you want downside protection from gold, then ideally they'd be inversely correlated. So when stocks go down, gold goes up. So X is still the same, numbers 1 down to 10. Y this time is 10 minus X. So 10 minus 1, so that's going to be 9. Go down 1 line. 10 minus 2 is 8. 10 minus 3 is 7. Okay, I can see how that works. The correlation of that is minus 1. They're inversely correlated. In fact, perfectly inversely correlated. So that's kind of how we like to see gold. Obviously, nothing's perfect. But what happens if the correlation was 0? What would that mean? Well, that would mean they're actually no correlation at all. So they're not inversely, they're not positively correlated, they're kind of like more like random. So I've popped in a random function there, RAND, and you can see all the numbers there are random. The correlation is minus 0.008. Oh, basically 0. Gotcha, uncorrelated. So if gold and stocks have a correlation of minus 1, that means they're inversely correlated, and that could be good. On the other hand, if they have a correlation of 0, that means they're uncorrelated, and that could be good as well. If they have a correlation of 1, well, that's kind of bad. We already know that gold underperforms stocks. Why am I buying gold then? If the correlation is minus 1, we'll call that a hedge, because it hedges against the downside of the stock market. On the other hand, if the correlation is 0, so uncorrelated, then it's called diversification. Right, we know the theory. Now let's add that functionality to my graphing software. Unfortunately, my graphing software does not have inbuilt Excel. It's a pity, it saved me a lot of time. However, I know the secret formula, well, it's not that secret, that the Excel Coral function is based on. Take a look. Oh, that's nice, Sebastian. A whole lot of sums and X's and Y's and little lines over them. That's nice. In particular, this is the formula for the Pearson correlation coefficient, which is the one in Excel. Excuse me, Sebastian. I slept through maths class. Stop inadvertently trying to make me good at maths. I know what you're doing. Oh, right. Here are the results. Over 31.2 years, our complete history, gold versus the S&P 500. The correlation is 79.1%. Wow. Okay, hang on, that number's a bit high. Is it minus 1 to 1? Yes, but I've just represented this as a percentage. So this is 0.791. Which is actually close to 1. That's really high correlation. Wow. So remember, we said minus 1 is good, 0 is good, 1 is bad, and this is pretty close to 1, isn't it? 0.791. Well, I know that gold is good, and yet the correlation does seem high. Maybe what you think is high is not really high. Can I have a second opinion on that? Well, yes, you can. Here's the Pearson correlation coefficient, R. In other words, this is what we've been calculating the entire time. Greater than 0.5 is considered to be strong. Minus 0.791 and 0.5 was already strong, so this is a super strong correlation. Well, yes, it is. You told me you coded this up yourself. Maybe you made some mistake. There's no way in the world that gold is that highly correlated to stocks. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. So you want to check my homework. That we can do. Back to Excel. Here is some sample data that we're going to use. It has a correlation of 0.90, right? On the right, we have a printout of the database. We have all the X's and the Y's underneath, right? The X's go 1 to 10, yes, that's good. The Y's go 2, 4, 6, 6, 3. Oh, that's exactly the same as on the spreadsheet, yes. And it ends with a 12. Okay, so all the data is the same. Now we've got identical data. If my implementation is actually good, we should get exactly the same correlation coefficient. Oh, this is a graph between X and Y. Okay, interesting. The correlation between X and Y, according to my software, is 90.6%. Well, that's starting to sound very familiar to me. Okay, what was the Excel one? 0.9063. Okay, and of course I convert mine to percentage, so divided by 100. Well, they're actually exactly the same figure. 0.906. Yeah, they're exactly the same figure. So we've proven two things. Firstly, I'm damn good at programming. And secondly, it appears that gold and the S&P 500 total return does in fact have a correlation of 79.1%, which is particularly high. Well, if we can't use the reason that gold and stocks are uncorrelated, because that definitely does not appear to be true, but there is a third reason why you might want to buy gold. And that is it's inherently more stable than stocks. Aha! So although gold is not uncorrelated to stocks, which we've discovered, maybe gold acts more like bonds where it smooths things over. The share market drops by 40%, perhaps gold only drops by 10% or 20%. That could be very important to some people. So Sebastian, do you have a special formula to figure out how smooth stock returns are? And will I have to learn more math? Yes, to having a new formula. No, to the math, because we've already covered that in 2 previous videos. Here is the S&P 500 versus gold. The same graph I showed you a moment ago, but it has now little dots. Oh, I can see that. Yes, little lines. And it appears that the green dotted line is actually following the S&P 500 up, and the yellow line is following the gold. Right. Let's see what they are. LOBF. What does that stand for? That stands for the line of best fit. In other words, we find the exponential line of best fit that most closely follows the data. To work out whether stocks or gold has smoother returns or more predictable returns, all you need to do is to figure out the error, the delta between the stock's price and that line of best fit at each time, and then add them up and find out which actually has the biggest amount of error. Now, here we're not actually comparing the performance of stocks to gold, we're actually comparing stocks against its own line of best fit and gold against its own line of best fit. Well, I hate to break it to you, Sebastian, but I'm not about to get my ruler out and measure up all the differences between the line of best fit and the actual returns. That sounds like a lovely day's work for you to do. Such fun! But fortunately, it's already coded into my graphing software. And here's the results. The predictability, which is how far the actual returns are away from the line of best fit. Gold has a predictability of 82.6%. S&P 500 is 90.1%. Oh! In other words, stocks are more predictable than gold. Yes, that's exactly what that means. Relative to the line of best fit, the results of gold are actually less predictable than the results of the S&P 500. Okay, that's not what some people were expecting. So we've completed our tests. What were the results? Does gold outperform stocks over the long term? No, we answered that. Does gold have a lower correlation to stocks? No, it actually has a very high correlation to stocks. Is gold inherently more stable than stocks? Well, the answer to that is no. The S&P 500 is actually slightly more stable than gold. I've just found out that the cops are after me. Is a prosecutor the same as a DA? A district attorney is also referred to as a public prosecutor, state's attorney, or prosecuting attorney. Oh, no. And here I have Constantin DA, district attorney. The district attorney of Constantin is after me right now. Hang on a minute. Is there such a place as Constantin? No, there's no such place as Constantin, so I don't know why they'd have a district attorney. Oh, silly me. See the little gold symbol beside their name? That means they're one of my brand new channel members. Oh, how exciting. Thank you very much, Constantin, for joining up to the channel and becoming one of my members. And if you want all the perks that Constantin is getting right now, hit the join button below this video. Gold versus stocks. I've shown you all the facts. We've had a look at the performance. Right, we know who wins there. We've had a look at the correlation, and we've had a look at which is more stable over time. The question is, should you buy gold? Well, I'm here to provide you with historical data to interpret it using science. Whether you actually go ahead and buy gold is entirely up to you. What I can tell you, though, is why some people may actually buy gold. So reason number 1, gold protects me if the market crashes. That's a very common one. When we tested that premise, we actually found they were highly correlated, and so that seems to be more of a myth than a fact based on the data that we have. Excuse me, do you have an anti-gold agenda? Is big stocks getting to you? No. If the data worked out the other way, that gold was in fact much better, then I would happily doing a video espousing all the better returns of gold. So I'm strictly following the data. I'm pretty much agnostic. Reason number 2, gold helps me diversify. Well, that's true. Gold and stocks are actually closely correlated, but it's not 100%. So by definition, if you buy into something that isn't 100%, you are getting more diversification. But take a look at the graph. That's the returns of gold versus stocks. You're taking a massive hit there on your performance based on that graph. Is that small amount of diversification you'd be getting from gold warrant that underperformance? Well, that's a question for you. And the last reason is gold is a real store of value. Cash is a fiat currency. Is that fiat like the French car? No, that's a fiat currency, as in it's not actually backed by gold. It's backed only by the government's promise. No real value. Is the Australian dollar going to crash? Is our money going to be worthless? Should I convert most of my money into gold? It's going to be a lot safer. Should I have a prepper's pantry filled with enough food to last me for 5 years? And have you memorised your emergency escape plan for when society collapses? And have you built your emergency bunker in the hills? No, I haven't, in case you're wondering. I'm a little bit behind on emergency bunkers. But there are some secret photos never revealed before that prove that perhaps I'm more of a prepper than I realise. This is an actual photo of the top shelf of my fridge right now. I'm not making this up. You actually look at the dates. The milk expires on the 27th of March, which is in a few days' time. And this is actually a stack of cat food which we have, which is sitting on my studio chair, and you can see the studio lights behind it. All this is 100% real. I have so much dine, it doesn't actually fit in the photo. It actually stands by a couple of stacks beyond what you can see. That we bought in the last, I'm going to say about 10 days. Don't judge me, it's on special. See, there it is. Look at that. I'm saving $4.50 a box. Now, who wouldn't want that? So it appears I've actually become a full-on prepper without even meaning to. And after this video goes public, I'm sure the Prepper Society will vote me as president next week. Do you know, I have a tool that I use to predict the stock market. Oh, well, that's exciting. Click here to find out what it is, or click here if you've seen that already.